Welcome to Data Forward, the podcast that keeps you ahead in the fast-evolving world of enterprise AI and data management. We bring you expert insights, actionable strategies, and the latest trends to help you stay on top. Ready to shape the future of data? Let's Data Forward.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Data Forge. We are here at Autonomous 25, Acceldata's premier data conference. And I'm so glad to welcome Supratibh Srivastava. He's a principal sales AI ML at AWS. Supratibh, welcome to Acceldata, Autonomous 25.
Thank you so much, Sonam. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start with the basics. In your experience, what tends to trip enterprises up when it comes to getting their data ready for AI? Because, we hear a lot about how important a high-quality data is for GenAI to actually work at scale. So what do you think about it?
So, let me take a step back on that, right? And you will hear me, you people are the leaders in a lot of these spaces. I'm talking about governance, security and stuff, observability and stuff. One thing which I have seen a lot of customers struggle with is the intent, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing they need to understand is what is the intent of what they're trying to implement, right? It's GenAI has come out to be like a hammer and everything is now a nail for people. But the best way to do or apply any new technology is to look at your business process, to look at the KPIs. What is not changing? The KPIs of your business process probably is not going to change. So what you do is you look at the technology like this, and you look at the KPIs and you say, which of these KPIs can I really influence using this new technology? And when you start moving from there, then you can have, okay, if I need to reduce this, this is what we have. Then what kind of data do I need to bring in over here? Who really has the data in the organization? How do I make it flow inside? And then, all these steps after that become a matter of trying to solve a problem. But this very first step of having that intent and knowing what you're going to really solve with it is probably the most important one. And I have seen, you talk of the size, I've seen large enterprises to even startups, all the way to startups, sort of getting stuck on that. At the start of, I think, 2022 was when ChatGPT was launched, right? At the start, it was a mandate. Everybody wanted to use GenAI. Boards were talking, if you're not using, you're going to be left behind. And a lot of executives, engineers, and people we used to talk to, we want to use GenAI for what? We want to run a POC. We'll see what it is for. So that intent probably becomes the most important thing. And then, of course, the governance, the silos, which I was hearing a keynote. The silos especially in large enterprises, you have got HR data, you've got customer data, you've got finance data, but probably it'll make sense at some point for certain kind of insights to be able to combine those, right? So having those, what kind of access is given to whom, how does the governance runs? These are the fine-grained things which tend to slow things down, if not actually trip the enterprises.
I'm glad you said that, because the convergence and unification of tools, I think that is the key now to automate and get things done faster and more smarter.
Exactly.
So I know Bedrock is making a big splash, right? But what's actually happening on the ground? And a lot of people at this event, they really ask about these questions, that they are really excited about Bedrock. But what are the real enterprises doing and bringing to their existing platforms when it comes to using the new technology?
Absolutely. So Bedrock has been one since we introduced it. And then the beauty of Bedrock is, while you're looking at it as sort of a one ring to rule them all, but it is not. The beauty of it is where we start plugging in the whole, other partners and ecosystem, the platforms into that to make it something which a customer can use at their will, right? And that has been where it is a true team sport, if I can say so. It's a platform, and obviously there are models, and we're our partners like Anthropic. We have got Claude built in, we have got AI21, we have got Cohere. All of these are coming in. Then there are open source model like Llama. We are being able to provide that to the customer. And then there are, partners like you, partners like Fiddler, who are able to come and complete that range of tools which you can provide to the customer, which, right from the start, from being able to get the data all the way to being able to train the model, fine tune it, be able to observe the data as well as the end output. Bedrock is able to provide the functionality end to end. As always with any AWS service, we are really surprised at what customers, pleasantly surprised at what customers do. We have got large enterprises like, United Airlines. They are actually using Bedrock to be able to sort of modernize the entire old mainframe systems they had. So think about it like this. The person to be able to enter the ticketing system and to be able to enter the passenger details and all would take X amount of time. Now, using Bedrock and natural language processing and stuff, they have removed the complete specialized training. So it can be cut down to, I do not have the exact statistic, but I believe it is a fraction of what it used to take earlier to bring a person on board. Similarly with the companies like DoorDash, right?
Yeah.
We have got companies like DoorDash who are actually taking this and putting it into their customer service, into their analytics. So these are some of the real good use cases we have seen what customers take into with it.
That is so exciting.
Plus.
Now, we have talked about foundational models like Bedrock, obviously, but where do the enterprise data sets fit in?
So just a small correction. The Bedrock is more of a holder of the foundation models.
Okay.
It's the foundation models fit in over this. Think of it like a carousel, right?
Okay.
So you are able to, like olden days used to have those slides you can rotate and put a new slide for projection.
Yeah.
Bedrock serves like that. You can plug in and plug out different models, and based on your need, based on what your, what the data set, what the use case you have, you will be able to sort of get the output or get the functionality out of it. Coming to your, I'm sorry, I missed your question. It was about data sets?
Yes, it's about enterprise data set. Where do they fit in?
So, three trends which we are seeing converge very fast. Number one is, till about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, but 15 years ago, structured data used to be the king, right?
Yeah.
All the data warehouses, RDBMS, everything was built around that. But last 10 years or so, we started seeing unstructured data really come in.
Yes.
And now that it looks like as more and more unstructured data, including our conversation and stuff, is coming in, that is now becoming a core. So there is a shift in the center of gravity.
Yes.
The other thing which we are seeing is multimodal approaches. So earlier, this unstructured data would rely mostly on the text kind of thing, which we are seeing, JSON files and stuff.
Yeah.
But now we are talking about pictures, we're talking about videos. We have had customers who are using this for vehicle training data. Right, LiDAR data, those kind of things. Now the variety of unstructured data is really going up. So that is the second trend we have seen. And then the third thing we are seeing is, which is very interesting, is it used to be very easy for companies to be able to silo the data. So in this, for example, HR data will probably be used only by the HR people or by the senior management and stuff like that. Right? Same with financial data.
Yeah.
And you can provide an access to certain people with certain privileges to be able to access that. So, but with the advent of GenAI, now what is happening is there may be certain users who you don't want to give the access to data.
Yeah.
But the summary or the trend of the data might be useful in the work they're doing.
Interesting.
Right?
Yes.
For example, let's talk about a financial analyst who is working, and you do not really want to want him to look at the HR data. But an overall trend of whether the salaries have been going up or going down in a particular segment or a particular skill set might be useful to them.
Yeah.
And interestingly, foundation models or even RAG-based architectures are in a position to be able to provide that, right?
Yes.
To be able to provide the summarization without really going down to the fine-grained details. So it's a sort of obfuscation which is done of the data. But at a very high level. So now we have got newer challenges which did not exist before in the traditional data sets.
I mean, what you're trying to say is people who do not have knowledge as deep as somebody could get in data, like maybe from the business side, because I'm from marketing, I also have access to that data now at the consumable level.
At a consumable level, at a consumable level, and at a trend level. what I mean to say is, for example, in marketing, let's say you want some access, you want to understand the historical product data. How did this product perform? And that might be confidential data, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of that this category of product has been doing well in these kind of areas.
Exactly.
The generic information which your agent or a foundation model might be able to extract, right? So you do not have the individual data points as something you're restricted for.
Exactly.
But the trend will probably be useful to you
for me.
to be able to do your job.
Makes total sense. But there are some organizations that are going all in when it comes to AI, and others are still circling around it. You mean, some would just give access at the superficial level, at the high level, just to make sure that they are AI first. Do you see that difference out there, and what are your thoughts about it?
Yes, absolutely. There are, if we can broadly categorize, there are like three kind of customers, and this is across the band. One is which are AI, they're born into AI, right? Their business model exists because now there are technologies which will be able to facilitate it. Think of it in terms of like Uber. A business model of Uber would not exist without a mobile, right? Before that, it was just a taxi service. So Uber came into existence because there is because mobiles came into existence.
Yeah.
Similarly, the likes of Perplexity today exist because foundation models are there. Otherwise, it will be a difficult job to be able to look at that amount of data. So there are customers like that who are existing because of that. There are a second category of customers who are actually looking at whatever the standard business process or the market edge is, and they're trying to understand how really to use GenAI into that and create even a bigger edge kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there are third customers who are still experimenting, trying to figure out how to get that in the process and
automating a few workflows.
Exactly, automating customer service, chatbots, those kind of very common use cases. It all comes down to two things. Number one is, and rather three things. One is which industry they operate in. Certain industries like healthcare, financial, BFSI and all that, they are vary about where the data goes, and rightly so. You don't want the data going out, right? So that is one category. I mean, that is the reason of their hesitancy. They're still experimenting on the edges, but that is one category, one of the reasons. The other reason for that is probably the organizational intent, where from leadership's perspective, are they going to really give the reins? Are they ready to experiment? Are they going to provide the data access? Are they going to create a skunk works in the company to be able to do that, right? So what is the organizational intent? That is, again, a very big factor.
Okay.
And then the third thing we are seeing is just, and this is especially true for enterprises, is many a times just the legacy tooling which is present. How easy or difficult it is to be able to access and pull out that data on which you're going to create a RAG model, on which you're going to fine tune your foundation model and stuff like that. So that is.
I think we see that too, because a lot of enterprises were set up on a big legacy stack. And now they are, migrating to a much modern data stack.
So these contribute to how easily or what are the hurdles in them being able to adopt and how quickly they can move on these things.
Absolutely. I think that became a foundation of my next question. So AWS in itself has a very broad AI ML data stack, right? But how do you see it evolving over the next couple of years?
So, just very quickly, when AWS looks at AI ML, and we have been doing this for more than a decade now through various services, we want to be able to provide the services and meet the customer where they are, right? So essentially, we start from the top. We have got services which are standalone, fully usable independently. Talk about vision, right? It's a standalone service. You can use it, but it is built on machine learning. A level below that is what we, services like Bedrock, SageMaker, where we provide a level of control. Customers can open the bonnet, change things. And it is meant for machine learning engineers and others who want to have that level of control. And even below that, we have got very close to the hardware. We provide the accelerators, libraries, whatever you want to take and build your own, if that is what your business requires and demands. Just like the rest of the market, we believe that the agentic workflows are going to be key, right? and essentially enabling helping customers being able to build out those agentic workflows, as well as enabling them to hook up with what is already built, what is in terms of their legacy systems,
Yes.
legacy data structure, legacy data stores and stuff like that. That is going to become key, right? How rapidly a customer is able to sort of maintain their market edge, because the customers are also, because the competitors are also innovating, will depend on how quickly they are able to overcome these hurdles. And then one more thing, which I'm sure a lot of customers are realizing is, and this is true for us also, we are seeing a lot of role boundaries are getting blurred. Right?
Yeah.
For example, I have not coded. I started as an engineer for first 10 years of my career, but I haven't coded in the last 14 years. But I was last weekend, I used Replit to create a fully functional application and hosted it, just using prompts.
Yeah.
I have never coded in Node.js, and that is what it was. So that means if I can do it, anybody can, right? So now from being a coder, now I'm able to conceive a product and give life to it, at least an MVP I can talk about, right? These things will start happening inside the organizations as well. So the traditional data engineer versus, data analyst versus your senior leadership who is able to take decision on the strategy, we'll start seeing a leader who wants something may not have to wait to really for an analyst to give him the data.
Exactly.
It's just a text command away from getting
and just get the thing themselves.
Exactly. So we are, as at AWS, we believe that a lot of what we can call the order of things are changing, and we want to provide the tools to the customers to be able to help and accelerate that change.
Yeah. So moving on, I think you talked about agentic workflows, and agentic AI in general is making a lot of wave, right? And how do data teams prepare for it? Because you talk to them every day, we talk to them, and with AI systems becoming more autonomous, they can take actions, they can take decisions on our behalf.
Right.
And that's where data readiness becomes really important.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that is where companies like Acceldata are really pioneering the field, right? So, for example, your agentic data management tool which you have launched, the platform which you have launched, that is probably the way to go, because going forward, it is not just about the data, but also how you're able to manage, extricate the data, and then being able to put it back depending on all the sources from which the data will be coming. The two things are going to happen. Number one, you talked about agents are going to get deployed.
Yeah.
But also think about the amount of data which is going to come in is going to start increasing, right?
Yes.
Because now already we are capturing a lot of activities, but now these agents are going to interact and they're going to also produce data, which will probably be useful for further analysis, right?
Right.
So the idea of having these kind of agentic data managers over there to be able to extract, understand, and even file the data properly as new data is coming in is key.
Yes.
The governance around this, we talked about an earlier case where you might be looking at a trend, but you might not have access to the individual, and we don't want you to have access to the individual data. That continues to be there, right?
Yeah.
So, but you might not want for an individual, but it is okay for agent to have access to that data, because agent probably will know what to do with it and will maintain the sanctity of their data, right? So how now when two agents are talking, how do you exactly work on getting that permission or getting the alignment going between them, right?
Yeah.
So essentially for any enterprise, number one is the data readiness is key. Getting the data, identifying, like I said, starting from the business process, coming back, identifying which of the data stores are going to be used, how to get them available, how to still safeguard them, and then deploying advanced tools which can help agents scale, like an agentic data manager or observability tools. Again, I think you folks have one of the biggest tools in that area. And then post deployment, using tools like Fiddler to be able to observe that and having a close feedback loop, which comes back to your data, so that this is what the output was. this is what the inference was, but it was such because we were not able to provide this data or because this data was wrong. So being able to complete that circle, have that complete observability circle is going to be very important.
Very important.
And that is a challenge because as we speak, GenAI is not deterministic. So what you get once, you'll not get the second time.
Yeah.
Right? So, but to have that loop of being able to track it down every time, that is something which is going to be foundational.
All right, so let's talk about hallucinations. So they have been making headlines for maybe all the wrong reasons. I recently saw an article in MIT Technology Review recently talking about how hallucinations in Gen AI, they're still a big problem, especially in enterprises use cases. Like, what is AWS doing to reduce that risk?
Yeah, and on the lighter side, we have seen how codes are being tripped over, invented cases and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's number one, it is the nature of the tool, right? So that is where we need a lot of grounding to ensure that what is coming out of a foundation model or at least an application, a GenAI application, is actually grounded in some level of truth. We have got tools. That is where RAG architecture comes in, because RAG is able to reference and actually give you what part is coming from which piece of data. And tools like Acceldata provide that level of observability to be able to trace it back. And then we have got additional tools like guardrails, right?
Yes.
So that you can define exactly what is the nature of output which is coming in, or what is the nature of even input, the prompt which is going in. Is that a valid prompt or not? Or what kind? Because there are certain cases we know which are corner cases. We know the certain prompt is going to create certain kind of output.
Yeah.
So we want to be aware of that, and that is where a lot of these tools, the safety mechanisms, guardrails, are all come into picture to be able to handle this.
Good that you mentioned about that, because I think let's talk about governance a little bit.
Sure.
Because it's always not the first priority for the folks who think about AI specifically. So maybe they should be. But we know AI models are only as good as the data going in, but governance often feels like an afterthought. So how do you think enterprises should be thinking about things like lineage, observability, and compliance, especially with Agentic AI adoption as it ramps up with our announcement?
Absolutely. Yeah. Obviously, you have got the access control, the row level, column level access, and all that is there in place, and that is not changing. Two things are changing. Number one, you are now going to be talking, a lot of this data is now going to be talking to agents and agentic workflow more than humans, right?
Yes.
And there have to be mechanisms to be able to, number one, trace, and number two, decide what data can go to what agent. So that building that governance, that mechanism is now going to start changing, and that is something enterprises will have to account for. And then the second thing we talked about, right? The data in itself, the way we have been defining data at a cell level, at a row level, it continues to be there, or as a JSON object. But there might be insights coming from data which might be more useful rather than the whole data. Yeah. How do you go about? It's not a solved problem.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys are working on it, but that is something which is going to become critical as we go forward.
What advice would you give to data and platform teams who are just beginning their GenAI initiatives now?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I said, begin with the end in mind. It is very important to not only know where you're going to be using it today, in what business process or how you're going to be using to improve, or where it's going to get deployed, in which agentic workflow or which business process improvement. But other complexity which is now going to get added is the field is so rapidly evolving that you do not know what the end is going to look like, right? So what is, if today there's an agent which is able to talk and get that, tomorrow we might have something which is actually able to hypothesize on that. You want to be able to provide access at that point to those kind of agents. My advice would be, and I'm not a data expert, but my advice would be to design for scalability and automation. Right? The idea that it is, number one, what the data which you're storing over there or the data which you are capturing, your mechanism should be scalable to both capture as well as to be able to govern that. And then the second thing is you need to make allowances. Earlier we were thinking in terms of humans, but now you need to be able to make allowances in terms of agents to be able to access those data workflows and all, right? And then the third one is, of course, as we go forward, given the current socioeconomic environment, it's slightly unpredictable where we are going to sit with the various compliance frameworks. HIPAA is there today, is going to expand, contract, we do not know. We have got our European governance mechanisms in place. Is it going to be there? Is it going to get with the GenAI stuff and all the competition coming in? Is it going to become loose? We do not know. So the idea of being able to build in controls which will help you sort of at a clear design for if somebody was designing a tariff system or a custom system 10 years ago, they probably would have designed something which would be able to change the tariff very rapidly, right? Given the current environment. So something similar would probably be needed if there are data teams who are starting to put up these systems, these mechanisms, these platforms for them.
Absolutely. I think you have nailed the point, and it was so wonderful speaking with you.
Likewise, Sonam.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming to Autonomous 25. We love to host you every year, and hopefully we'll see you again next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Welcome to Data Forward, the podcast that keeps you ahead in the fast-evolving world of enterprise AI and data management. We bring you expert insights, actionable strategies, and the latest trends to help you stay on top. Ready to shape the future of data? Let's Data Forward.